You've entered BOOKSTORM with Kristen Civiletto and me, Chris Storm. This is a podcast devoted to best-selling books that matter, books that make a difference. We're diving down deep with beloved authors about their stories. We're exposing hot-button topics and heartfelt themes, the issues that affect each of us in our own lives, as siblings, parents, partners, friends, as human beings. We're braving new ideas, fresh thoughts, hard lessons, and important truths. Those kinds of things that stay with us long after we turn the last page and close the book. Well, welcome back to BOOKSTORM Podcast, all of you loyal listeners in 70 countries, all 50 states, 1,500 cities. We're so grateful for all of you. We have a very special show here for you today because it's our Christmas episode. And who would we have for Christmas other than the wonderful Viola Shipman, aka Wade Rouse? And if you're following us on YouTube, you're going to be extra surprised and pleased because we have Gary, Wade's hubby, with us today, the crafter, decorator extraordinaire. And he's going to share a few little glimpses of their Christmas decorations as we talk about this beautiful Christmas book, The Wishing Bridge. Now, before we get started, welcome Wade and Gary.
Ho, ho, ho.
Hello, hello.
Thank you.
I want to tell our listeners, as I always do, a little bit about Wade's background because it's so well-deserved. And you've been working at this for so many years. Wade Rouse, as you know, Viola Shipman, is a USA Today and internationally best-selling author. He chose his grandmother's name, Viola Shipman, as a pen name to honor the woman whose heirlooms and family stories inspire his fiction. Do you know that Wade's books have been selected multiple times as must-reads? And I'm going to go through this list because it's long. NBC's Today Show, Washington Post, USA Today, Chelsea Lately, Indie Next Pick. His writing has been featured in places like Time Magazine, All Things Considered, People Magazine, Good Housekeeping, Forbes, Countrywoman, Writer's Digest, Publishers Weekly. Oh my goodness, it's amazing. Library Journal sums it up best. I'm going to quote them. Wade has hit upon the perfect formula to tell heartwarming, intergenerational family stories by weaving together the lives, the loves, and history of family through cherished heirlooms. And we are very grateful that this is Wade's third time on BOOKSTORM Podcast. We had to get Gary on. We're delighted to have you both.
It's great to be here. You two, you know how much I adore you both. And I'm glad that Gary could join me for the holiday episode.
Absolutely. We're ready to add some sparkle.
Well, we love it. And we loved this book. We're here to talk about The Wishing Bridge, of course. And I'd like to give our listeners just a backdrop of the story. And I promise I won't give anything away because there's a lot of cool things that happen in the story. Now, we meet Henrietta Wegner. She goes by Henry. And in the story, right out of the gate, her job is on the line. She was once a top merger and acquisitions executive, and now a younger and, yes, perhaps perkier person is gunning for her job. Henry's boss makes it clear that her future with the company is on the line unless she can come up with something big. And spur of the moment, she comes up with an idea that possibly could save her job, but it's not going to sit well with the rest of her family. She tells her boss that she can convince her aging parents to sell their iconic family business, a Christmas store. It is in the iconic Frankenmuth, Michigan area, this beautiful, beautiful setting for this story. And it would be sold to a massive corporation, one that probably would never appreciate the hometown, the beautiful family traditions that make up this company and this family. Now, she returns to Michigan for the holidays, and it raises some eyebrows because she stays longer than her normal 24 hours. Her parents are happy, but a little puzzled about her extended stay. Her brother is a little suspicious, and her friends, of course, are happy she's there, but very curious about what's going on. As she begins to reconnect with people, with the store, with some of the family's traditions, and as Christmas nears, all of this is about to collide in a pretty spectacular fashion. I would love it if you wanted to add anything to the backdrop of the story.
Yeah, appropriately enough, there are dogs in the book too. so so
We
it's fitting. Yeah, I always say every book that I write is inspired by a family memory, and The Wishing Bridge is no different. It was inspired by Christmases with my grandma Shipman growing up in the Missouri Ozarks. And I just wanted to kind of recall traditions that we love, but also as we age that are harder to celebrate when we begin to lose those we love, or especially at the holidays, painful memories come seeping in. So it was inspired by, as always, something that's a piece of my heart.
Yeah, beautiful. And again, that's why your books are so rich, because you are delving into these things that we wonder about and think about and experience and feel. So fantastic.
Kristen and I always say before we come on, we get our book and we look at how many pages we've flipped over and underlined, because you have a lot of life wisdom, from living all this, and Wishing Bridge is no exception. I want to say to our listeners, do you want to go here? It's the world's largest Christmas store at 25 Christmas Lane. The town decorations, the food, the lights, the beautiful glockenspiel clock. I wanted to crawl right inside this beautiful little town and never come out. Sophie says something to Henry, because Henry had left the town and come back. It was a hard decision for you to leave, Henry. It was a hard decision for me to stay. Home is filled with lots of memories, good, bad, raw, beautiful. Some folks leave home for the right reasons, some for the wrong. Some stay where they were born because they love it, others because they're too scared of the unknown. Wow. In today's age of easy travel and relocation, how we can relate to all this. As the author, and Gary, you too, please feel free to answer anything. How did Sophie, Henry, and even all of us in the real world, how do we know if we made the right decision to stay or go?
Wow, that's you picked truly one of my favorite passages in the book. And really, I think that's the foundational question in The Wishing Bridge. Long story short, this book was inspired, as I said, by Christmases with my grandmother, because I grew up watching A Charlie Brown Christmas with her, eating sugar cookies that we made. And I never felt safer in my life, just sitting on her lap, on her couch in her tiny little living room of her small house. And yet, I knew that my grandmother, as a working poor woman, me growing up in rural America, was preparing me to leave. She was preparing me to go out and forge my way in the world, giving me strength, that me knowing all along that that's not where I was going to be, or where I was meant to be the rest of my life. And that's really kind of the whole crux of the novel, which is, what happens when you love your family unconditionally and they love you in the same way, and yet that you have to move on from the place that you were born and go out and make your way in the world? Are you making the right decision? What will the repercussions be in your life? And when Sophie asks Henry and says to her what you just read, that's exactly it. I think so many of us leave for the right reasons. A town may be too small. You may be seeking bigger things in your life. And many of us stay and or leave for the wrong reasons. We feel like Henry's brother does in the book, that he is pinned to the small town in which he was born and raised because his sister left and his parents need someone by them. I think we don't often know the decision until much later in life, and those are really the questions that I wanted to ask in this book. For me, and I think for Henry, you leave and you return sometimes and see things in a very different way. Age, wisdom, lack of wisdom does very important things to us, and we return and often see where we were born and raised, or we see our parents in a brand new light than we did when we were young. And how we handle that, I think, really makes a huge impact on our lives. Henry returns and sees, like my grandma Shipman always said, that life is as short as one blink of God's eye. It goes like that. And she realizes that before it's too late. I think I did too, in many ways. You return home again, and the one thing that I hope readers get from the novel is that her family, Henry's family, like mine did, planted a seed within her of strength and of wisdom. And that as you grow in age, hopefully, when life is hard, you've made bad decisions, it's hard to get up in the morning and trudge on. That little seed, when you don't realize it, has grown into a tree. And it allows you to face your future with strength and make the right decisions. And that's foundational for this novel. And thank you for reading that. That is truly one of my favorite passages.
And could I ask you this? Is this from your grandmother Shipman? Because Henry said that her grandmother told her, and I'm going to quote it, "You have all the ingredients for joy, whether you leave or stay." Or
it is, that's another one of my favorite lines from the book. You're spot on in your reading. It was, my grandmother always said to me, and again, it was not easy for me growing up in rural America. I always ask, when I'm on tour, I always ask readers if they've seen the TV show Ozark. Most have, and I always say they sugarcoated it. It was much worse than that for me. And yet my grandmother and my mother told me never to change the person who I was and how I was born, to be unique, to be myself, because that's the only way. If you don't love yourself, you'll never be able to love anyone else in this world. You'll never be able to change the world or do what you were meant to be. And I think we forget that we do have, life is hard. We get knocked down over and over and over again. And I think if you have that ability to look within and realize that there is that strength and that joy, you do have all the ingredients to be happy. But we forget that in the world.
this beautiful story brings it back to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to ask Gary, did you have that experience of making a choice to leave your hometown or a place where you grew up?
I was very similar to Wade, and it's interesting. Like I grew up in a mid-sized little town, and I always was obsessed with living in a city from the time I was a little kid. My mom used to say when we would get on an expressway and get out of the town, I would call them super duper highways. And I was always just fascinated with the pulse of a city. And now we've had the opportunity to live in a city, but Wade and I live in a small resort town in Michigan. And I love the fact I have parts, and you've written about this, parts of what I had growing up. And it's got art and it has some cool city vibes, even though it's a small town. And I think the most interesting thing Wade and I realized as adults is, are you running from something, or do you feel like you are pulled to live somewhere? And like, we love the town we live in, and we've had the opportunity to go on book tour and see amazing cities. And we've gone on trips to Europe. And I have to say, every experience we have, we love meeting new people. We love seeing different cultures and seeing everything. But there's no place like home when we get back. Like, we do know we live exactly where we love. And I know a lot of people go on vacation and they wish they could live where they went on vacation. And sometimes the grass isn't greener, but sometimes it is. And if you're drawn to that, I say go for it. We took a huge leap when we did that, because we found our resort town we go to on vacation. We took a huge, huge leap. So yeah, I have bits and pieces of everything, I feel like, and lots of memories.
And people run. I mean, a huge part of the wishing bridge is Henry's actually, she's running in many ways because she thinks she sees her life as it's always going to be. She's a child, but she knows exactly at 50 how it's going to turn out. And um, she was running. And so many of us in our lives just run until we're so exhausted and we don't even remember or acknowledge why we've been running for so long. And I really always encourage readers to, if they can, just slow down just a little bit and try to ground yourselves, especially at this time of year, and ask yourself what's most important in your life, and are you where you're meant to be? We're not allowed to ask ourselves these questions as adults. We get very much into a treadmill of making money, and it's important, or having the right health care or retirement, and yet we become very unhappy adults, which then affects so many around us. And I hope people are able at this time of year just to still and do some self-reflection. And that's something, especially as Americans, we do not allow ourselves to do. We just don't do it. We think it's silly.
I love the intentionality of what you were talking about. And, it's almost a choice to slow down, to choose that joy that you were talking about. I love that. And by the way, I'm one of those who couldn't wait to leave my hometown of Niagara Falls. And, years later, come back with a different perspective. So it's
Well,
interesting that you mentioned. I love
fascinating.
that.
I
Um,
also have to say, I love the way um, you said you don't want to, if you're running away, is different from what Gary said. You're looking for who you are meant to be. It's a big difference in moving. I'm not proud to say, I think we've moved 7 times through my husband's career, but I have loved every place I have lived, and I have no regret. Met wonderful people along the way. And that's some wisdom. Thank you both for sharing that with us.
And you, I'm sure, are open to that. You have to, you have to open yourself up. You're doing one of the most difficult things which is, you're starting over again and again with new people and new friends, and it's hard to make yourself vulnerable, but you have to do that to be liked and to be welcomed. It's difficult to do as humans.
Yes, it is.
I want to go back to something that you had mentioned about traditions, because in your story, the town of Frankenmuth and the Wegner family cherished their traditions. And, for example, the town residents sang Silent Night together at a special church service. And his family gathered to cut down a tree. And I love the name of this place, For the Love of Christmas. And a cherry branch was placed in water in the hopes that it would blossom in time for Christmas. Even certain foods were made at certain times. And I wanted to ask you, what is it about these traditions in your story, and you mentioned even with your grandmother, that brings this warmth, that gives us that comfort?
You'll make me cry. Yeah, I do want to say this. The town of Frankenmuth, where the Wishing Bridge is set, is very real. It's called one of the cutest Christmas towns in the world every single year, and inspired by, the town has the world's largest Christmas store, which kind of started from someone's basement. Um, you know, Traditions for me growing up were a huge part of my Ozarks family. Uh, you know, every single thing. My grandmother. And by the way, the For the Love of Christmas is actually the name of the tree lot in the Ozarks where we used to go. We were real clever in the Ozarks, um, and we would go cut down, the big trees for our front windows. And one of the things I've been telling readers is on tour is that when I would watch Charlie Brown with my grandmother, it started another tradition at the tree farm. We would start to dig up trees and plant them at my parents' home. And my grandmother, from the very first tree we planted, said, you know, just watch what will grow with a little bit of love. And all those trees we planted over the years became a huge forest in our yard. Um, she
Wow.
had shiny bright ornaments on her tree. She had a blinking angel. She had her mother's manger set under the tree. She made her own tree skirts, the felt applique. sugar cookies every single year that we made with our cookie cutters. Santa, would frost the beard that high. There were so many traditions. And the hardest thing about aging and getting older is when you lose those people, it's difficult to continue embracing those because there's a lot of pain associated with it now. What we've tried to do very much in our lives is celebrate that, acknowledge those we love aren't with us, but we are celebrating them and remembering them by the ornaments we pull out. But I mean, bins, we have I'm not exaggerating. He puts up 9, 10 trees. We have thousands of ornaments. We pull them out. We tell stories about who gave them to us, where they came from, where they originated, even ones we got on travel with each other. For us, I think we loved no family is perfect. And I don't mean to put every single person I'm talking about on a pedestal because they could be difficult people like I was. But I love them dearly, just as Gary loved his family so much. And this is a way for us to reconnect to them. And I know some people have had hard lives and childhoods. And I know many have to walk away from a lot of that pain that was caused to them. But too many of us stop because something happened in our lives that's hurt us. And I feel that we need to acknowledge that and reconnect with that because there's typically so much more good that outweighs the bad. And with us, just this tree Gary's probably going to show you is just a way that we celebrate those. And we're going to make his mother's coffee cake this Christmas.
And it's the two of us. So sometimes, especially on your Wine Words and Wade show that airs on Facebook on Thursday nights, sometimes people will go, it's just me at home by myself. I don't want to decorate. And I have gotten so many folks to start decorating. And I'm like, do it for yourself. It's just, I put 10 trees up. I'm crazy. It's just the two of us. We'll have friends over for the holidays and things like that. We've now, both of us, I lost my mother in July. And Wade, we have no parents. We're orphans now. And there's been many people that as soon as that happens, they're done. I just encouraged a neighbor. I was showing her our trees and talking, and she goes, I stopped putting up a tree when my mom passed away. I thought, why am I doing it anymore? And she just got a tree. She ordered a tree and she's putting up a tree this year. And there's something, I call them seasonal switch outs. There's something nice about honoring yourself that you made it through another season, another year of another chapter in your life. And to light a candle, put up some sparkle, put up a little bit of joy, no matter what holiday it is. I mean, I'm crazy because I do St. Patrick's Day, I do every holiday, but there's something nice honoring that. And there's something nice just about having the TV off and having your Christmas lights going or the flickering of a fire or a candle, just that quiet and stillness and honoring the good memories, but also starting some new traditions. I think people, when Wade talks about traditions, so many people think about it's only got to be my grandparents' apple pie or whatever tradition. One of our best friends, she lost her mother this year also. And we have started a tradition with her of making gingerbread houses. And we did it last year and we just did it again this year. So I think too, like, light a fire, be your own person and start some of your own traditions. I mean, blow it up, go do some new things. And I think it's fun to honor that. I mean, people come into our house and they look at our tree and I start telling the history of the ornaments and people cry because it reminds them of their grandmother or whoever. Or they'll say, oh my gosh, you kept that ornament I gave you 15 years ago. And I just think it's nice to have that, and you can blur past a holiday and ignore that it happens, but why not embrace it and embrace new traditions and hang on to the old ones that you like?
Yeah, and I used to work before I was an author. I used to work in educational public relations for many years, and I worked in a private school. And you cannot deny yourself the joy of when you see kids preparing for the holidays or Valentine's or Easter, whatever it is, it bubbles up within you again and reminds you of just having fun with the season again. And we need that. We really need that as people.
It's a great message. This is a great holiday show because, like you said, the holidays don't always bring back happy memories. Here's what I'm hearing you say. Don't let the sad steal your happy. And if
Exactly.
people you love are gone, maybe all the more reason to do it up big because their chance is over, but you're still here. And wouldn't someone like your grandmothers maybe say to you, or your mother, Gary, I'm sorry for your loss this year? Wouldn't they say, hey, it was taken from me. Now you live it to the full in memory and because I can't anymore.
You're gonna make me cry.
I know.
'Cause
Every time.
that's the way I feel about Christmas this year for me,
Yeah.
is my mother was just like Wade's parents and grandmother, just everything Christmas. I brought home my parents' stockings. My dad passed away in 2020, so it's been like a bam bam to me. It just has been
Oh,
tough. And I
sorry.
brought home their stockings. And I have them on our tree and I've stuck tinsel on them just to honor that. And my mother did stockings for Wade and I mean, up until a couple years ago when she wasn't able to anymore. And it's just I do. This year to me, I mean, I have a 12-foot tree up and it's like to me, I kept thinking I ordered this tree. I had a 9-foot tree. I got this 12-foot. I said, I want it to reach the heavens. I want this tree. I want my mother to see this tree. So it is important.
I love it. And so, yes, Gary, every time Wade comes on, Kristen and me and Gary are usually crying or eyes watering or something. So join us. It's fun sometimes to get a little choked up.
It's a good
Okay,
release.
that leads me into my next question. Okay, I love this part. Henry remembers back to 1977 when her father had said to her, you will be an amazing leader, smart, kind. You'll always be thinking of everyone else, but just know that the world will not appreciate that philosophy. We become jaded. We become selfish. We forget what matters in the world, each other. But more than anything, we forget the magic of Christmas, its meaning and purpose, that there's something bigger than us, that there's hope. Could each of you expand? Why is this so true? Even in the real world, we need a little Christmas. And why do we get so caught up in the rush of life that we forget what's important?
Well, I have to say, first of all, last night we watched Polar Express, and there's this, and he was bawling at the end of it. He had not seen it, and there's this piece at the end where there's a bell that one of the main character has that only jingles for those that believe, and his parents were like, "What is this?" And they pick it up, and it makes no sound. And only he and his sister can hear it. And there is something there's a magic that tends to dissipate from our lives the older that we get. And again, I tell aspiring writers this or artists this all the time. We have to unlearn a lot as adults because so much of our lives is built on being scared, fearful, doing the right thing, typically for others more than yourself. It's a bad cycle that we get ourselves into. So much of our lives is to please our parents or our grandparents, or to make our kids happy, or to live up with the Joneses. It's rarely for our own joy. And so that light, I believe, for many of us gets dimmed the older that we get, especially at the holiday times. And it's difficult to keep that going. For me, I tell people, be yourself, be who you are meant to be, because only then does that radiate out into the world. And people can see that and feel it, and you can change their lives. And as a result, they will go out and change others' lives. It's hard though. It's hard. it's hard to tell people because we get stuck in such a rut in our lives. It's hard for them to hear. It's hard for them to listen because before I started writing, I was that person. Somebody would say, write a book. I'm like, sure, yeah, it's that easy. Go change the world. Right, of course. What am I going to do without my IRA? It's hard. And people, we need somehow to come back to that joy that we had. I say this a lot to writers too. When you're a kid, just like when you're watching Polar Express, when someone would ask you what you wanted to be as an adult, you would say, an actor or an astronaut or the president or whatever it is. That gets ratcheted down because we feel we have to do what we're supposed to do. And it's really hard for someone like me that wanted to be creative and was never told that was an option. So somehow we have to come back to center again. I know you can.
I'm like really getting emotional over this. I'm hearing you talk, and now I've got 4 things I want to say. So I may talk too much. First of all,
do it. We love it.
First of all, do not be perfect. Don't strive for perfection. Don't have that expectation, period. I am so irritated and sick and tired of seeing these TikTok and Instagram things of how to make the most beautiful Christmas garland. What I did was, and I'm thinking what you did was spend about 2 weeks and about $5,000 to make this garland. Like, I make handmade things. I wing it. A lot of my stuff, it doesn't have to be perfect. Not everything has to match. The stress just on that now of the perfect charcuterie board for Christmas or this and that. I think everybody wants like this perfection. Just have fun. Have fun decorating. Have fun with your family and friends. If you use a paper plate, you use a paper plate. So that's one thing I think during the holidays, people need to stop with the Kardashian level like decorations and just have a good time. Sorry, Kardashians, didn't mean to throw them under the bus. Secondly, I think it's important, I do this every year, is I buy a gift for myself when I'm shopping. Nothing big, but just something, and I honor myself. And it sounds narcissistic, but I have done it for years. And then obviously gift giving, and then help somebody out, whether it's donating to the Salvation Army, whether it's doing something for the unhomed, just a random thing. And then when you're in the store, my grandmother wrote a poem about this. I share it again sometime, about smiling and making eye contact with people, because you never know. And somebody did that when right after my mother had passed, and just smiled at me. It made me feel so good because now I'm going to cry. I thought, this woman is smiling and my mother's smiling at me. So random goodness. And then my big tip for the holidays is, my mom always did this when everybody transitioned to that. I just want money. I want a gift card. My mother would go, okay, I'll get you your gift card, but you have to, Wade always gave a list, but other family members, especially the younger kids, wanted gift cards. And my mom would tell them, I will get you a gift card, but you have to tell me one thing, physical item that you want, because I'm getting that for you too. She wanted to go to the store. There is something great about getting a sweater or an ornament and opening it up and remembering someone bought this for me. Yeah. Not a gift card where I went to Crate and Barrel and got this and that. I don't even remember what I spent it on. But the actual gift, especially after losing my mother, this house is full of things that she got for me that I will remember and cherish. And I think that's a big thing for people. If you're doing a gift card, get them something, or tell them, you know what, I want to buy you something, not just a gift card.
The way to be present.
That's wisdom. All those are little trinkets of holiday wisdom. Thank you.
Yeah. And also things that I wish I really could appreciate when I was 19, not now that I'm at this age, because, that idea of having to be perfect or to do things a certain way. We try to drill that into our kids now, but it's very hard because there's a lot of messages in the world.
That is.
I just wanted to ask you a last question. It's a little bit off topic, but not really. We've been talking about families and we've been talking about their influence. And there was another subject that you broached in your book, and that is this idea of the three generation effect of,
Mm.
a family business that is started by one generation. And then pretty soon, three generations later, we've got people with very different motives or values, and they don't maybe treat the business the same. And I was wondering if you could comment on that because it was such an integral part of the story, the Wishing Bridge.
Yeah, it's a huge part of it. And thank you for asking that. A big piece of the book is I wanted to honor the American dream and the American entrepreneur, which is fading more and more in the world, and especially in the US. We're sort of being gobbled alive by this whale of uniformity, where every place, no matter where you are, looks the same or feels the same. And a town like Frankenmuth is like our town of Saugatuck, Michigan, and where we are in Palm Springs is filled with small independent businesses, um, that have started recently or maybe 100 years ago. And there's something beautiful about what that offers to us. I grew up going to a town square. My whole life was just those four streets, but you had everything on it at the time. You had the malt shop and the jeweler and the clothing store. Everything was right there. And so much has changed. And my father worked for a small business growing up. He was a chemical engineer, very different than me, but it was named a small business of the year by Ronald Reagan in the 80s. And I just kind of wanted to honor a piece of that. That first generation starts a business because they have a dream or a specific talent or passion. And as you said, and as I note in the novel, that changes greatly generation to generation. I've seen, we lived in St. Louis for almost 20 years, filled with a lot of Anheuser-Busch, Ralston Purina, McDonnell Douglas, which became Boeing, that changed immensely over the course of time as each kind of new generation of family took it over. I always think that second generation, like Henry and the Wishing Bridge, perhaps doesn't want to be a part of it because it almost overtook their lives growing up. Their parents worked so hard to make it, they almost don't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Yet that's the generation that sees it differently, that has a new eye, that maybe can know how to expand and explode it. And that's really what she comes to learn in the book. I'm a small business. You're a small business. We're a web of connection that relies on one another. People always say, "Oh, you're an author." I am an author, and I do work for a major publisher, but I am my own small business. I work with my agent, a small business. I work with publicists, small business. I work with a web firm, small business, marketing, small business, gift company, small business. But we all work together to make something bigger. And that's what I want people to see. We forget how hard it is to make that dream come true and to make it survive generation after generation. It's almost impossible these days. So I really wanted to honor how hard it is to make that dream come true and keep it alive.
Yeah. Yeah, that was excellent. Gary, did you want to add anything to that?
Not on that one. That's
Okay.
I do think it is interesting the small businesses and the uniqueness of them. And really people need to remember to, like what you were saying. I'll ditto Wade.
Yeah, yeah, independent bookstores. That's my entire, that is my life. I always say I would not have a career without these small bookstores all around the country that, when many people don't know who the heck I am still, but when they really didn't know who the heck I was, these bookstore owners and employees loved my books. And you would walk into the store and they would say, "Hey, why don't you try a Viola Shipman novel? I think it might resonate with you or touch you." And that grows exponentially over time. I'm still a believer in word of mouth. We can try, Lord knows we'd love to be a Reese Witherspoon pick. But there's just something about a reader telling another reader that they love this book or what you do in telling viewers and readers how much you love an author's work, there is nothing that will ever beat that. And that is still kind of the kernel of what small business is all about.
Yeah.
That is so true because it's personal. Small business is personal. You meet the owner, you develop a relationship, you choose something from their shop that they handpicked because they love it, and you take a little piece of it home. Now, here's a question for both of you because I can't wait for this portion of our holiday show. For any of you who don't know, Wade has a Facebook live show called Wine and Words with Wade. And this Thursday, December 7th at 6:30 p.m. is their annual craft and baking show. The craft list is posted ahead of time, and I don't want to steal any thunder, but could each of you share maybe some of your decorations, some traditions that you brought from the past, and some things that you made together?
Well, should we go? I can't show it. I have to run and get it. We could
No,
do our gingerbread houses or something that we do together. We have ornaments on the tree that we've made together. Usually we do an ornament almost each year too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Some of his crafting is not as crafty as my crafting. Like
That's
that's the thing I love about, I used to just do the craft shows and take over. And now I brought Wade on because his readers like it, because I'll be doing it and his might get botched, or sometimes he'll one up me on something. Not that we're competitive with it at all, but
I mean, nobody can compete with Gary in crafting. I mean, he could take like a piece of grass and make it into like a tree. I don't know how he does it, but
okay, like I'm gonna pivot real quick just with the camera. So this tree right here is made of hangers. There's bent hangers in here, and it's a tinsel tree. And so that little tree there, and then we also, there's a Barbie back there.
yes,
That's
we
a
have
whole
vintage Barbie.
that's a whole nother story. Wade and I travel with Barbie like a flat Stanley, and an antique guy found that's the original Malibu Barbie's Mattel's
I wish you could.
mock-up display, and he found it somewhere and we framed it. And then I'm going to spin back here. This is another tradition. There's a little Santa that ice skates back here, and that was my mother's. And she would wind that up, and it's a music box. And I remember that as a kid, and my mom gave that to me a couple of years ago, and it's still in the original box from Sears Roebuck. And I have now taken that tradition, of course, because I put everything on steroids. I added, these are all miniature World Market. They're handmade wood mid-century homes, since we're in Palm Springs right now, and they all light up. So I've created a whole village
All around
so
the
that's
original.
that's a tradition. Wade each year gets me a new one of these. So I'm going to have to somehow get a bigger cabinet next year. So every Christmas I get a new
Bigger
one.
house.
We used to put stockings for each other, and
We
do
do.
that a lot. Every year he makes his dad's apple dumpling turnover recipe at Christmas. It is crazy to make. It is painstaking,
So good.
but it's great. And I'll be making this year my mom's snickerdoodle cookies, which it dawned on me I've never made them before, because she always made them for me. I'd make a lot of her recipes, but at Christmas I knew I'd never had to, because my mom was making me my snickerdoodles. So we're going to do that.
We're making those on Thursday as part of the
Yeah.
show.
What else do we have to look forward to on Thursday? Can you give us any other little
Your-
spoilers?
Well, a lot is revolving around my mom. She had a lot of brooches and pens, and I have two nephews, and their girlfriends took some of her other jewelry, but the costume jewelry, everybody was like, So I am making a Christmas tree on felt, like in a shadow box on that. And I've seen that before, and I thought, oh, so I'm going to do that. We're going to be carving some candles into Christmas trees. There's going to be some ornament making, and then the snickerdoodles. And what was the other thing? There's one more, and I'm drawing a blank on it.
It's a lot, and
Yeah.
people love it. And I have to say that the craft day items that he's done in the past, we still have
I'll
here
go grab some.
as part of our decorations. They're beautiful. They turn out, and it's exactly what you said earlier. You really don't need a lot of money. We try to do all of these things for under a couple of bucks that people can do, run out to Michael's and get some styrofoam.
This is just a styrofoam cone, and I hot glued all of these little Michael's bedazzles on that to make a little jewel tone Christmas
Oh,
tree.
I love
Now,
that.
Love
I
it.
started, this is when I say don't be perfect. I started this on the craft show and I thought, how long can that take? Well, this did take me about a week and a half.
I love all this because I am not crafty at all, but I
And
love
then
everything Christmas.
this is, and last year Wade had his book out, The Edge of Summer, which was obviously about buttons. So these are all buttons on they're on a styrofoam and they're a series of buttons. So I made a little gnome Santa tree.
How cute. Oh my goodness.
That's
See,
special.
I have things saved all over my house with the idea that I want to do something with it. So I have a box of all broken glass, everything I've broken
Oh, wow.
over the years. Someday I'm going to do something crafty like that. I'm going to keep watching your show and we cannot
Get a-
wait for
Get
Thursday.
get a flat ornament and glue it on the glass on it. One year our tree
Okay.
fell over and some of my ornaments, this was like
It's a
years ago,
nightmare.
broke and I took them and made mosaic off of a flat ornament. And so I took all of those. I now, crazy and I'll shut up. I sandbag the base of our tree. This 12-foot tree has sandbags on it underneath the tree skirt, and I have tether wired it to the feet of our sofa. You can't see the wires, it's all an illusion. But I'm like, that tree's not gonna.
Yeah, when the tree fell over years ago and our ornaments, a lot of favorite ornaments busted, I thought I was gonna have to medevac him out of there. It was not good.
It would be a nightmare. I used to say, this sounds terrible. I used to say to my kids, if this house catches on fire, forget the photo albums, take the Christmas ornaments. This is true.
Yeah.
True.
And I think trees fall, like my mom's tree fell over one year and we were making waffles and the tree fell over. We're trying to prop the tree back up and my grandmother was there and she's yelling, Patty, the bagels are burning, the bagels are burning. And I'm thinking, they're waffles. It was like, so sometimes but it makes a hilarious story now. So sometimes when I say don't be perfect, sometimes those silly,
happens.
imperfect moments make a good story later on.
Mhm. They sure do. It has been just an absolute delight having the two of you here together with us. This is the most special holiday episode we've ever had. I've just enjoyed every second. And I want to say to our listeners, do not miss the Thursday live. It's under Viola Shipman, Wine and Word with Wade, 6:30 p.m. Gary will be there too. You're going to be able to see all of these things. I cannot wait for it. Happy holidays to both of you. One more thing, please connect with Wade Rouse, AKA Viola Shipman, and you can find him on two websites. You have Wade Rouse and you have Viola Shipman. You have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Am I missing anything? You're everywhere.
E-newsletter. He has an e-newsletter. If you go to the Viola Shipman page, and he does a quarterly e-newsletter.
It's filled with recipes, giveaways, all this stuff that we're talking about today. We do a lot of original content in there.
I love it so much. It's just been so wonderful. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you both for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Happy holidays.
You as
Happy
well.
holidays. See you Thursday.
Chris, what a fun and beautiful and inspiring discussion with Wade and Gary. My goodness. I actually had to wipe my eyes several times because I was thinking about their idea of these traditions reflecting the love and care that somebody took in making things for them. That's, I think, why we cherish these things that we have. Oh my gosh, just beautiful.
Well, and you had something. So you talked a lot about traditions, and your grandmother made something at midnight. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, my big Italian family would come over to our house on Christmas Eve, and all growing up at midnight for some reason, they would make the sausages and the peppers. And we would go to a church service at midnight and everybody would come back and they'd be ready. And we'd leave one person to watch everything. So, how about you? Did you have
It's-
any traditions
Oh
that
my
have stuck
gosh,
with
so
you?
many. And it's like Gary and Wade said, my best memories were not expensive. So my grandparents did not have a lot. We would go down into their basement, and the fireplace was one of those little electric plug-ins with a cardboard brick exterior. And we as kids just loved when they set that up. They had a little miniature tree, and under it were little reindeer, and they were plastic. And I still have the plastic sled. It has Santa and the reindeer. The paint is all chipped off, and I put it front and center of my tree every year. It's these little memories that take us back to Christmases past, and then the ones that we form now, Christmas into the future. And I just love what they're doing individually, and what the life they have made together is very special.
Yeah, I agree. How beautiful.
I
Well,
wanted to ask him one thing, and I'm so sorry because I felt like we kept them for so long. But something else was in this little town that was very important. It was this glockenspiel clock. The bells sound, the stage comes to life, the figurines move as snow dancers. You've seen it before. My most memory is Germany with this clock. It tells the story of the Pied Piper who came to town to drive out the rats by playing a magical melody with a flute. Only two children could not keep pace following the Pied Piper in the story and were left behind. But this memory of the Glockenspiel, I think, had some symbolism also in the story. Do you recall that clock?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, and everyone may interpret this differently, but I was thinking about the lure of success and achievement luring out the children who grew up in this town when they became young adults. And, just like the Pied Piper story, it does not have a good ending because, there was a lot of retribution and other negative things that came along. But I think the point is to understand that what's leading you in a certain direction, making sure that it's something that has good at its center.
Mhm.
Because if it's hollow, if it's just success and money, then I'm not sure you're going to have that good ending.
Mhm. I love that, Kristen. I
Yeah.
think you nailed it with that glockenspiel. I think Wade would be proud of that interpretation. I had something that I took from the book in there too. It said the Pied Piper is a person who attracts a following through charisma and false promises. He entices people to follow him on good fortune, but actually leads them to their doom. I love that.
Absolutely.
As always, Wade's book has just so many little life wisdoms. This time they're centered around the holiday season. It's something we can all relate to in one form or another. Um, at one point, someone said this to Henry: where did the passionate girl who wanted to change the world go? When did she become another cog in the system, working to silence entrepreneurs and squash their dreams? And it's sort of like how Wade said in the beginning, we get sidetracked to a career because we know we have to make money. And in so doing, we lose our passion, our talent, our gift so often. And yes, maybe we can pay the bills, but will we ever be satisfied?
Yeah. You're hitting a little close to home there, Chris.
Or both of us, yes, so true. But what a pleasure. I just love it. Putting the book up again. The Wishing Bridge, Viola Shipman. Welcome to Bookstorm's Christmas edition. Come on, got to get this book. Crawl right inside. You're never going to want to leave. And in the meantime, we're going to say goodbye, and I'm going to leave you with a few storm predictions to pique your interest. I have so many here that I'm just going to tell you the author's name: Virginia Cantra, Nick Petrie, Jill Shalvis, Mary Kubica, AJ Hartley, CJ Ray, Joyce Maynard, Michelle Gable, Emma Gray, Matthew Blake, Abed Collar, Susan Mallory, Lisa Unger, and Heather Gudenkoff are all coming to join us on Bookstorm.
And listeners, we want to wish you the happiest of holidays. We're so thankful that you joined us. And we want you, of course, to stay on the radar with us. You can visit us at bookstormpodcast.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, on TikTok, and our YouTube. You will love it because you can see all of our wonderful authors. And we have a bevy of episodes that you can scroll through both on our website and on YouTube. So again, we absolutely are thrilled that you joined us, and we do wish everybody just a beautiful time filled with joy. Till next time, listeners, one of the best ways to brave the storm is to dive down deep with life-changing fiction.